You're 38 years old, and the navy blue uniform still feels like a suit of armor. Prestigious, though inside you only feel the weight of 15 years of overnight flights, impersonal hotels, and recycled air. You're the captain of an Airbus A320, and you're at 36,000 feet over the Atlantic. The cockpit is your technological sanctuary, space of calm where the only sound is the whisper of the engines and the hum of the navigation systems. To your right, the first officer silently reviews the fuel parameters. Everything is routine. Everything is under control. But suddenly, the lead flight attendant's voice breaks the calm through the intercom. There's a passenger in row 4 who insists, in an almost desperate way, that he needs to talk to you. It's not a medical emergency. It's not an apparent security issue. And it's simply a request that doesn't fit the manuals. He wants to see the cockpit. You sigh and adjust your headset. You know perfectly well that since the events of September 11th, access to the flight deck is sacred ground, off limits to the public. Security protocols are ironclad, the doors are reinforced, and any exception could mean the end of your career. However, the lead flight attendant insists that the man seems to be having a very specific anxiety attack and claims to be a retired engineer who worked on the design of these very engines 40 years ago. You rub your temple, glance at the first officer who just shrugs, and you decide that, once the aircraft is at stable cruise, and after a rigorous security check by the crew, you'll allow the man to approach the slightly open door under close supervision. When it finally happens, the door unlocks with a sharp click that sounds like a gunshot in the silence of the aisle. The man who appears isn't the enthusiast you expected. He's an elderly man around 80 years old, with trembling hands and a look that seems lost in time. He stands there at the threshold, not daring to enter, gazing at the constellation of LED lights, liquid crystal displays, and buttons covering every inch of the overhead panel. His eyes well up as his gaze travels across the artificial horizon. You realize that for him, this isn't just technology. It's the closing of a life's cycle. He asks permission to speak, and his voice sounds like old paper. He just wants to know if they still use the backup system he helped design in his youth. You calmly explain that the architecture has evolved, but that the basic safety principles his generation established remain the heart of this aircraft. The man nods, not just with his head, but with his whole body, as if a heavy burden has been lifted from his shoulders. For 5 minutes, the cockpit ceases to be a high-precision office and becomes a bridge between two eras. You show him the weather radar, you explain the route over the Azores, and he listens to you with the attention of a child seeing the ocean for the first time. You realize this man has spent his entire life thinking about the sky, but perhaps never had the chance to see the world from the place where you spend most of your days. The conversation flows strangely. He talks to you about hand-done calculations, about stress tests in wind tunnels that no longer exist, and about an aviation that was much noisier and more dangerous than today's. You talk to him about automation, about GPS, and about how the plane can almost fly itself if you ask it to. Yet, you both share that mystical connection only understood by those who have dedicated their lives to defying gravity. The first officer maintains his guard, monitoring the instruments, but you notice he's listening with respect too. It's a moment of truce in the middle of a profession that sometimes feels mechanical and dehumanized by airline pressures and impossible schedules. Suddenly, the lead flight attendant signals to the gentleman that he must return to his seat for security reasons. The man straightens up. He wipes his tears with a handkerchief and shakes your hand with a firmness he didn't seem to possess when he arrived. He thanks you for allowing him to see his work in full operation one last time. When the reinforced door closes again and you hear the electronic lock engage, the cockpit returns to being that cold, professional cubicle as always. But the air feels different. You look out the window towards the immensity of the ocean and think about how many thousands of people like him have put their effort into making it possible for you to be up here, sitting in a leather seat 7 miles above the ground, sipping coffee while crossing a continent. Being a pilot is, many times, an exercise in shared solitude. You spend hours with people you barely know, talking about procedures and weather, while real life happens down there, on the surface. You miss birthdays, Christmases, and funerals because the airline schedule doesn't forgive. Sometimes you forget that this plane isn't just a transport machine, but the fulfilled dream of generations of engineers and dreamers. The encounter with the old man gives you back perspective. It reminds you that you're not just carrying 300 tons of metal and fuel, but that you're carrying the remnants of a legacy and the hopes of hundreds of passengers who trust their lives to your hands and to the systems that man helped create. The rest of the flight passes without incident. The landing is smooth, the tires kissing the asphalt of the runway with a familiar squeak, and the passengers begin to deplane. You stay in the cockpit, finishing the post-flight paperwork, reviewing the technical logs, and preparing the handover for the next crew. As you leave the plane and walk through the airport corridor, you see the elderly man in the distance, walking slowly with his small suitcase. He stops in front of a large window, looks towards the plane you just left, and gives a small wave. You return the gesture, although you know he probably can't see you through the tinted glass. You board the transport that will take you to the hotel, feeling the typical fatigue of a transatlantic flight. A cold room awaits you, mediocre room service, and a 10-minute call with your family before trying to sleep for the return flight tomorrow. But tonight, before closing your eyes, you won't think about oil levels or forecast turbulence over the English Channel. You'll think about that man and how a simple door opened for 5 minutes could give meaning to decades of silent work. You understand that your office is the dream of many, and that, despite the routine and exhaustion, you are one of the few privileged ones who can see the world from above, keeping alive the flame of those who dared to imagine that man could fly. Tomorrow you'll put on the uniform again, adjust your silver wings on your chest, and request clearance for takeoff once more, carrying with you the memory of all those who, like that passenger, still look at the sky with wonder. Like, subscribe for more stories, and comment what video you'd like to see next. See you.